Hey there, Robert John Hadfield from Audiomover here again to talk about some really interesting vinyl. And I've got something here that's pretty cool. And you probably, if you were into hard rock in the 80s, you probably would have heard of these guys just because they were kind of interesting because of what they did. And it was a band called Stryper. And they were out of the LA scene like a lot of heavy metal bands were. They had some really cool gimmicks to their stuff, but what really set them apart, that made them unique, that put them on the map, it wasn't the music, because the music was okay. They had some cool tunes, but I don't know, I didn't love it. I liked them. I think I saw them in concert maybe like 5 times. I mean, so it's kind of into the idea, because I liked the weirdness of it. The fact that what it was is that they were a Christian heavy metal band, and nothing like that had really existed prior to this. I mean, there were a few. There was a band, I remember, I had an old guitar teacher that was this evangelical Christian, and he used to tell me about this band called the Res Band, and I went and bought one of their albums just because he was always telling me about them. I don't know, I didn't like it. And so, but I was always into kind of oddball stuff. And so when I heard that there was this Christian heavy metal band, I instantly just had to know. I was just too curious about it. And so I'm out buying this stuff. And the first one that I bought by this band called Stryper, it wasn't actually an album. It was a kind of a 12-inch single, and it was a song called "Reason for the Season." And to be honest, it was a cool song, and it was basically about Christmas. He is the reason for the season. And it was actually a decent song. And then on that same single, or the 12-inch single or EP or whatever that one was, they had a song. They did "Winter Wonderland," the old Christmas classic, and it was kind of fun. So I dug it. And then they started putting albums out, and they had a couple of different albums before the one that this single came off of. So this actually came off an album called "To Hell with the Devil." Once again, Christian band, and so it was Christian, and it was a little bit silly, but I don't know, just the way they would. But it was fun, and it was interesting just because of that. But it was their third studio album. The albums that they had before that one of them was called The Yellow and Black Attack, and the other one was called Soldiers Under Command. And then so they had those two first. I think one of them might have been considered more of an EP. I have them all. I can't really remember. It's been a long time since I listened to them. Like I said, I wasn't super into them. I just liked the weirdness of it all. And they also had a not just the gimmick. I don't want to call it a gimmick, because they were deadly serious about this, their Christianity. I mean, they threw Bibles. Literally, they threw Bibles with their logo out in concerts. And if you read about them today, they still, the music that they put out, the stuff they worked on, they continued to have this kind of Christian approach. And so but they had this other really cool gimmick, which was they called themselves the Yellow and Black Attack. And so the clothes they would wear were just the colors yellow and black, stripes, bright yellow, and then black, like bumblebee almost looking colors. And the stage looked like that. Their clothes that they wore, and of course, so you take that 80s glam vibe, and then you just make everything yellow and black, and that's what Stryper was. And they were a good band, and the singer. So the band was made up of 4 people. There was Michael Sweet and Robert Sweet. Michael Sweet was the singer, and if there was ever anybody that sounded more like Dennis DeYoung, I don't know who it would be. I mean, from Styx, that's what Michael Sweet, in my opinion, sounded just like Dennis DeYoung. Robert Sweet was his brother, and he was the drummer. Oz Fox was the guitar player, and that wasn't his real name. He got the name Oz apparently because when he was in high school, before becoming a Christian, he was really into Black Sabbath, and so he would play Black Sabbath and sing, and he apparently sounded just like Ozzy. So all of his friends in high school called him Oz or Ozzy, and so he became Oz Fox. And then the bassist was a guy named Timothy Gaines. Now, Timothy Gaines, I don't know the whole story behind it, but he was dismissed from the band or left the band prior to this album, To Hell with the Devil. I'm not sure who played bass on this, but that was so he was It was really those three guys. And that's why when you look at this, it says Michael Sweet, Robert Sweet, and Oz Fox, if you look at the credits, because Timothy Gaines was gone for whatever reason on this album. Now, there's a couple of interesting things about this record. The first one you'll see is pretty obvious. It's yellow. And this was some of the fun stuff about vinyl way back when, was that you'd have these things like make it clear yellow vinyl. I mean, look at this. You can see my hand through there. This was just neat stuff to have. It was cool, it was collectible. You'd show people just because you kind of dug it. It was kind of interesting. And so this was yellow vinyl, or yellow clear vinyl, which was kind of neat. And it had the song A. Side A was this song called Free, which was what they were trying to make their hit song off the album. And it was an okay tune. It was kind of heavy. And they had a music video out for it. And it was a moderately cool tune. Once again, I wasn't a huge fan, but it was kind of cool. And then on the other side, I Don't Know, this was just another song off of the album. And this is what a lot of times on these 45s or these singles that they would do, is they'd put just another song from the album. Sometimes it was one of the throwaway songs. And then that was just what they would do on side B. The other thing that Stryper had that was kind of interesting is they always had this Isaiah 53:5. And all their logos and their albums, they'd always have Isaiah 53:5. Well, what is Isaiah 53:5? Well, Isaiah 53:5, it's a scripture that basically says he was wounded for our transgressions, he was punished something, and by his stripes we are healed. And then that's why they called themselves Stryper, because of the stripes of Jesus. And a lot of people have taken that over the years to mean the when Jesus was whipped, the scars that were left, or I guess there weren't scars, or the tears on his back, because it was right before he was killed. Anyway, that's where the name Stryper comes from. And you'll see the yellow and black stripes right there. And that was the whole thing. The yellow and black, the stripes that I just talked about a second ago, that was the whole thing. They made stripes all over their clothes. So, but the other thing that's really interesting about this particular 45 that's different than most 45s, and let me see if I have another one here to show you, is that you see this tiny little hole here, which was unusual for 45s. 45s usually had a bigger hole. Here, I've got one over here. So here's a Paul McCartney 45, ebony and ivory. And you'll see the difference there. The hole on this 45 is much larger than the hole on that 45. So the next question that somebody's going to ask is, well, since this one has the hole of a regular record, just the normal size hole, which I think is about 1/4 inch, does this play at 45 RPMs, or does it play at 33? Because 12-inch records play at 33 1/3 RPMs, where the 45s, it's one of the reasons we call them 45s, the singles played at 45 RPMs. The answer to that question is, yes, this plays at 45. It's a totally normal single. So what was with the small hole? Well, here's the thing. There wasn't anything magic about the hole on a 45. The reason that 45s had the larger hole was all physics. The point was, these 45s, where they were used a lot was in jukeboxes. And you might remember jukeboxes if you're old enough. What those were is that you would go to a bar or a restaurant or whatever, and they'd have a jukebox. And you'd go put a quarter in, or whatever, a dime, and they often called them record machines. You know the song Jump by Van Halen? I'm standing here, got my back against a record machine. That's what he's talking about. It's a jukebox. It's a record machine. And what they would do was that somebody would come in and they would fill this record machines with 45 RPM records, these little singles. And then patrons of the bar or the restaurant would go put a dime or a quarter, put another dime in the jukebox, baby. Remember that from Joan Jett? That's what it means, put a dime in the jukebox. It was to play a song. And what would happen is, if you ever watched one of these things, there was this machine inside that would go and it would reach over, a little arm would reach over and it would grab the single, the 45, and then it would move it over and it would put it on a platter, and then a needle, an arm would come out and start playing it. If you ever saw the opening to the TV show Happy Days, I think, as I recall, that they showed one of those things coming over and the record being thrown on the little turntable and then the needle coming over and starting to play it. Well, here's the thing. With this hole so small, and it's spinning and the jerking and how it starts turning, the displacement of the friction is over a very small area. Well, so what? Well, here's so what. You play one of these things 100 times a day, and then 100 times the next day, and 100 times the next day. Because there's this small amount of displacement for that friction, this hole starts to wear away a little bit. And then it doesn't fit right on the post, and then it'll start because it's starting to warble, and it just doesn't work. So the idea for the 45, and the reason they made the bigger hole, was that it displaced the friction over a larger area, and it didn't wear out as fast because of that. And so the reason they had the big holes on the 45s was primarily because of jukeboxes. It was in order to keep the record from wearing out. Because they could realistically put a jukebox, or a 45 RPM record in a jukebox, and it'll sit there for years. And if it was a really popular song, it might get played thousands and thousands and thousands of times, where, at home, this was never going to be in a jukebox. And it was never going to get played 100,000 times. You might play this a couple dozen times at your home. It wouldn't matter. So for home use, there really was no reason to put the big hole. The big hole was primarily to displace the friction in such a way that when it was used in a jukebox, that it wouldn't wear out. So that was kind of interesting about this particular 45, because a few people started doing this in the later stages of albums and 45s, especially when there's no way it would end up in a jukebox, and jukeboxes are going out of fashion. Just put it out this way. Just put the regular hole and just put it out that way, and then it just works. So anyway, so this plays at 45, and also the theory is, and although I didn't find this to always be true, and it might have just been the quality of the pressing. Theoretically, because it played faster, the quality should have been higher because the grooves were able to be spread out. It's a little bit like audio tape. When you would record an album in a studio and you were recording on tape, you would play that tape at 30 inches per second. I have a whole video on this channel. Go find it on 2-inch 24-track tape, and I talk all about this. The idea is that if you spread the recording out over a larger place, you're going to get higher quality. A larger space, you're going to get higher quality because there's plenty of surface area for it to get recorded on. The slower the record plays, theoretically, the lower the quality. Now, my experience with 45s, a lot of them sounded like garbage. And it might have been just the quality of the pressing, the vinyl, who knows what. But theoretically, these should have sounded better than the regular records. Michael Sweet, who was the singer, he went off, and interestingly, he ended up singing for Boston for a little while. He was apparently a big Boston fan, and Tom Scholz heard him and had him come sing in the band for a tour a little bit for a few years back in like 2007 or something. But anyway, and the other guys didn't, none of them have really done a ton outside of Stryper. This was their main thing and what they're best known for. And they were a cool band. I mean, it was just, they were, I really think they were the real deal. You read about Michael Sweet and Oz Fox, and I actually don't know much about the other guys, but, they stayed married. I think Michael Sweet's been the same person. I think they really, I don't know, but I think they lived the religion that they were pushing. And so, got to respect that with these guys. And like I said, I liked the idea of these guys, and they did have some pretty cool music, and they were good players. So, you couldn't knock that too much. They were a solid band for what they did. And so, if you like these videos, please like and subscribe to this channel. If you just sat through all that time me talking about these records, we make a lot of these videos, and we'd love to have you as a subscriber. And please like this video. Leave some messages, or put some comments down what other stuff you'd like us to. We have thousands of these records, and we've got all kinds of things we can talk about, all kinds of different genres and things. We'd love to get your feedback. And also, if you have old audio and videotapes and you need to convert them to digital, maybe you have some old audio videotapes of your old family vacations and birthday parties and things like that, or some cassette tapes of who knows what, piano recitals, grandma and grandpa talking. I mean, the things we get in the studio are all kinds of stuff. Go to audiomover.com and start an order and send them in to us, and we'll take care of that stuff. Anyway, with that, have a fantastic day.